This is the 864 podcast from Rob of the Green, providing you with some insights, ideas, and actionable takeaways in just 864 seconds, or 1% of your day, with the explicit goal of making you get a little better, even if it's just 1%. Here's your host, Rob O'Donoghue. Let's do this.
Hello there, welcome to another episode of the 864 podcast. This one is with Bibi Baskin. Bibi is a motivational speaker, a wellness enthusiast. She's also very active on social media. For those of you from Ireland, you may remember Bibi from TV presenting days in the 80s and 90s. She's also subsequently opened up a hotel in India. In our chat, we touch on lots of topics in the short space of time that we have. If you need and would like more info around Bibi, check her out on the socials. I have links in the show notes of this episode, and do please hang around for 60 seconds after the chat with Bibi, where you might get more useful information about the show, how to subscribe, how to rate, review, and all of that good stuff. With that, I will hand you over to the wonderful conversation with Bibi Baskin. Enjoy. I'm here this morning again on location with none other than Bibi Baskin. Bibi, first of all, thank you for doing the 1 minute Monday clip that will have gone out before this comes out, so that'll be out in the domain. Thanks for that, and thanks for agreeing to come on to this little 15-minute or so podcast. Appreciate it.
Not at all. It's my pleasure. It's a lot easier to be interviewed than to do what you're doing, because I used to do what you're doing a long time ago. So, no problem. Thank you.
I'm feeling the pressure of being in the kind of opposite role, and I obviously remember you completely from growing up in the 80s and 90s. So the concept is 15 minutes, kind of get a few lessons from your own journey and hopefully share some nuggets of wisdom that people can take something away and maybe put into practice in their own day-to-day lives. And I think when we connected event at Sarah, the Disrupt HR event, when you were growing up in Ireland, What was your ambition? What did you want to be? You grew up.
You're going to be so disappointed today, Rob. I never had an ambition like that. Probably not ever. I do remember finding my older sister's, she was a secretary, finding her notebooks from her secretarial course. I find them under the stairs. She's a lot older than I am. So I used to fill out the blanks, like I was a secretary or working in a shop.
Right.
So I enjoyed playing around like that as a child. So I suppose, if anything at all, I figured I might become a secretary. I never did.
And it was Donegal you were growing up in, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That's where
Donegal.
you're originally from.
Yeah.
So where did the kind of potential secretary idea go away, and when did the world of media and broadcasting come in?
Oh, there was never a plan. I don't think I've ever planned anything in my life. I had no idea what I wanted to do after I left Trinity. So I became a teacher for 1.5 years. And I love teaching. And I think in many ways, we all have to work out what is our talent, if you can call it that, or gift. The one thing in life that we're particularly good at. And I think for me, it's teaching. So I did it formally in schools for a while, but I gave that up. But to this day, I know I'm still a teacher. So eventually I became editor of an Irish language newspaper, which was then new. It was called Anish. And of course I love the Irish language and I'm fluent in it and speak it a lot. And because this concept, which was a kind of bright and breezy Irish language thing that hitherto had been quite dull, I was interviewed quite a bit on radio and sometimes on television. And I remember thinking, this broadcasting thing, I like it. So I wrote off a letter to RTE. I can still see it. Black ink, of course, trying to be classic like Henry Ford. And as for the way that I approached it, well, it would never work nowadays. But I think it was very human. I remember this line. I said, I wonder, would you have a small job for a female voice? Because I think my voice is not the worst part of me. Mm-hmm. I mean, talk about how to sell yourself, but that's what I wrote.
Well, look, it certainly worked.
It did. I got, indeed, the small job with the female voice in what it says in the papers. Right. It still goes on. And then eventually they gave me a choice of working on the news at 1 on radio or on going on to a new features program on television. And even though I was given the advice, maybe you should go for radio, because one great advantage of radio is at least you can scratch. I didn't take it. I went for television.
Okay.
And I haven't scratched since, by the way.
Well, but radio is a brilliant medium. Obviously, from my own perspective, there's a podcast, and when I started this out, Face for Radio and all that helps, like from my perspective. But
don't be silly. I love radio. I love the mystique of the voice. I love that you have no other props to get whatever it is you want to get across. There's no scenery. They're not looking at how you look. They're just listening to you, and it's a real treat when somebody wants to listen to you.
No, it is, and the explosion of podcasts over the last few years, I think, plays perfectly into what you do, and I think that's where hopefully something you can consider doing into the future.
I am indeed. I've been encouraged by a number of people to get going on my own podcasts, and the plan is to do some kind of little meditative thing or tip for maybe just a couple of minutes now and again for the mornings, because like yourself, I get up very early, and I do sometimes make videos of the dawn breaking and the birds singing and all that old stuff. I just find it very calming. So I think maybe podcasts are on the way.
Brilliant.
For me.
Looking forward to releasing in parallel to yours and trying to steal some market share off you in the future.
Steal away. The world's a big place, I always say, and plenty of room in it for all of us.
Absolutely. It was before you went to India, and we'll talk about that. Was life frenetic? Was there a point where you said, I kind of had enough of this, I needed a bit of a change? And did you see that coming?
Not absolutely as you put it. Life was not as frenetic as it is now. And since I've come back to Ireland a couple of years ago, that's one thing, and there aren't many things that I don't like about the way Ireland is at the moment, apart from the awful crises that we won't even go and talk about. But one of the things that I think affects a lot of people, maybe even people like yourself, Rob, is that they're working too hard. The hours are too long. And it's not healthy. And I find it very difficult with new friends to get the point across that it's sometimes very important indeed to do nothing so that you can still the mind. So back in my time on RTE, no, it wasn't that frenetic. So I didn't give it up because of that.
Right.
I gave it up because I'd been working in RTE for 8 years. And RTE is a great establishment as far as I'm concerned. I didn't have the big salaries now. It was a much more modest era. But I get bored with repetition. And that was why I gave up teaching earlier.
Right.
It's because you're repeating different faces in the classroom, but same difficulties. Sure. And the same with my job in RTE. I just wanted something different. I wanted change.
And change came in the form?
It came, first of all, in the form of, this was really silly. I moved my geography only. I moved to London and I worked with ITV and worked on radio, a lot of radio too in London with BBC and other stations. But you see, I was still doing the same job. Yeah. So after 4 or 5 years of that, I thought, no, I've got to move again. I want another change. And I did that, I think, in somewhat spectacular style.
So tell me about that. That's India, and that was originally a holiday?
Yeah, when I quit the job in London, I thought I'll go on a little holiday. I'd sold the house. I didn't know where to go. And you see, you can survive without planning. And I didn't make any plans except to go on a holiday. And I wanted to go to India because I'd never been before. And I wanted to learn more about an Indian system of wellness that I've always had a huge interest in. It's called Ayurveda. So I basically went to the home of that system of wellness for 3 weeks. That's a place called Kerala in South India. And I stayed for 15 years. Wow. And I always put it that way. Yeah. And in the process, I not only changed the countries and the continents, I changed the career. I became a hotelier.
And during that journey, the area that I'm passionate about is meditation and mindfulness. And you mentioned earlier on how fast and how frenetic life is. And for me, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've really started to begin the journey of getting into a proper practice of that, and it's helped massively. How did that start to come into your life over in India? Obviously, the home of, I suppose, yoga and yogis and all of that good stuff.
Well, I think it kind of seeped in. It was almost a bit like osmosis. So I bought up an old landmark building. It was just a private residence with outhouses. And I refurbished it. And in fact, the architect that helped me do that won an award from the Indian Association of Architects for the best refurbishment of a heritage building. Right. And then I turned it into a hotel. I added a swimming pool, a restaurant, an Ayurvedic wellness centre. And in that way, I became recognised by the government of India as the owner of a heritage hotel of India.
Right.
Now, there was a fair bit of busyness in that. And there certainly wasn't much meditation. Oh yeah, I'd always sneak off for an Ayurvedic massage. And I didn't have to pay for it because it was my own
perk,
premises.
Yeah.
So that was good. But once that was up and running, I'd say after a year or so, yeah, the way that Indians go about their life, they won't rush. We used to sit in the office and listen to the feet coming up the gravel drive. And although this may sound racist, but our guests who were European, it would be really quickly. And then we'd hear the feet that went... and we'd say, you're right, that's Indian.
Yeah.
They get it right. And I think that eventually seeped into me as well. And I believe it's the way forward. Nice and easy does it.
So talk to me maybe about some of the practices you've learned in meditation or how you approach it and how it is part of your day-to-day now.
I've become a big fan of Twitter, of course.
Yes.
And I started on that a little thing. It's only a simple matter called the Early Risers Club. And it's just a group of us who get up at maybe 5, and sometimes I'm up at 4, but I tend to keep it a bit quiet because I know it sounds a bit bizarre. But I don't need a lot of sleep, you see.
Yeah.
And according to the Ayurvedic way of looking at things, we don't all need 8 hours at all.
Yeah.
And my particular mind-body type really only needs 5.
Right.
So I get up early, not every morning, but I just waken up and it's still dark. So my
You
first...
set an alarm?
Oh, Christ, no.
Okay.
No.
It's a
Only if
natural
I have to get...
arising, okay.
No. I wouldn't dream of having any sort of screen in my bedroom.
Yeah.
Only if I have to get the 6 o'clock train from Cork. I wouldn't trust myself then to wake it up. So first thing is, I wait for the bird's song to start. And now I'm going to sound like a bloody hippie. And I'm not. It's just very calming. And then I will take a little video, not every morning, maybe once a week, twice a week, of the dawn breaking and the birds starting to make sounds and all of that. And that for me is my morning meditation.
Brilliant.
There's nobody around. I'm just loving nature. And I think it's a very healthy thing to do as well, to get out into the fresh air in the early morning. So that's how I start the day, a lot of the days.
Yeah, and obviously in your surrounds here, it's great because it's so in nature and it's beautiful from that perspective and lots of birds around. So that's always good. How do you get back into the moment? And do you find yourself racing sometimes that you realise, God, I need to reconnect here? Is there any triggers or cues you use to kind of recenter?
I know exactly what I use, and a lot of people have that problem, and particularly they can have that problem if they're trying to get to sleep and they're a bit of an insomniac. And in these motivational and wellness talks that I give around the country now, I've started to add in a thing about insomnia,
Right.
because we can all go to bed with a troubled mind, the mind that races. Of course, you can have that during the day as well. And the way that I bring myself back is to listen to my breath. It's an old technique. It's as old as the hills, but it works. So when you start to do that, you shut out all the thoughts that are racing through your mind and you bring yourself back down, and it's nice and easy and you get there. But during the day, I don't have that difficulty very much.
Right.
I met up with someone I've got to know in Cork in the last couple of years. I met up with him a couple of days ago, and the first thing he said to me was, well, what's the news? And I couldn't think of anything. He was basically asking me, what are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing after this? I said, my God, I can't think right now. So I think I'm pretty good at staying in the now, in the present moment. And that really is so important. And just in case people who are listening to this podcast are not practicing it, it's important for one reason in particular. It means that you are accepting and noticing everything that's happening in your life just at this moment. Because if you spend that time instead looking at the past or looking into the future, then you've lost the moment of now and you'll never get it back.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's certainly one of the most fundamental ways to try and get back into the moment is your breath. And I think a lot of people I talk to that try it and the whole, it's not working for me, the kind of mindset shift that they come to is that there is no working, it's just a practice, and you are going to wander off and you are going to drift away, but it's just to bring it back and back and back. Have you found it easier over time, or was it always something you could easily connect with?
I think it's like everything else in life. It takes practice. And there's no simple answer. But the more often you do anything, whether it's learning a language, playing the piano, or practicing your breathing or your meditation, the easier it becomes. It's all about practice. And that's the way to get there.
Brilliant. Believe it or not, our 15 minutes are up. I'll just end with one question. I like to ask people a quote or a cliche or some saying that they like to live by, or one that stands out. Anything come up when I ask that one? Throwing it at you now.
Yeah, well, when I give these wellness talks, and mostly it's all about change, the things we've been talking about today in the podcast, I always end with this. It's 2 lines of a poem.
Perfect.
And it's about change. Change knelt beside me in a wilderness, and in the gentlest voice I've ever heard, she said, I love being the reason for all your new beginnings.
A lovely way to end, to bookend it, about change. Bibi, thanks so much for coming on to my 864 podcast.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Great to meet you, and looking forward to sharing this with the world at large.
Fantastic. Thank you again.
Thanks. Hey folks, so that was the 864, 864 seconds or thereabouts, and I hope you enjoyed it. Was there one key takeaway that stood out? Was it good? Was it bad? I would love to hear about it. So in the few seconds that remain, and to be fair, I've probably gone over, but I have a few asks. Please do subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes so that you never miss another show. You've heard that one before. I would love if you leave a rating and or a review. All of these help get the show further up the rankings, which means more people see the podcast and then hopefully hear it. It means a lot to me. Follow me on Rob of the Green or on Spreaker.com/Rob of the Green. That's where all the podcasts are hosted, but on the Rob of the Green site you can get to everything. The 1% Better podcast, this one, the 1 Minute Monday videos, and you can also connect in with me through the website. There's a feedback page, or on any of the socials. Just look for @Rob of the Green or Rob of the Green. I think you get the picture. Finally, give yourselves a round of applause because you've all been so lovely, and thanks for listening. Have a great day and good luck.